These are very dishonest people. That's called election interference. And now they're fighting like hell because they want to try and get a guilty plea from the Supreme Court of the United States, which I can't imagine because you have presidential immunity. But strange things happen.
That would indeed be a strange thing that the special counsel Jack Smith would be able to get a guilty plea from the Supreme Court, because that doesn't mean anything and that's not what he's trying to do. Trump is relying on a concept of presidential immunity to defend him from the January 6th related charges, the big lie charges. Basically what he's saying is that he was president so he can do literally anything he wants. And virtually every Republican supports that idea, despite saying that they are against elites and elitism. So Jack Smith is saying, well, if you're gonna use that as your defense in all these cases, could we just have the Supreme Court actually rule on whether that applies? And Trump thinks that it's obvious. It's clear that that's the case, and he stacked the Supreme Court with conservatives. So one would think that he would be excited about that, but he's pretending at least that he's not. With the newest update being, though, that he has kind of gotten, at least for a bit, what he wants, which is to pump the brakes on these different cases against him. Judge Chutkan has put on hold all of the proceedings in his trial while we wait to hear what the Supreme Court thinks about this particular defense. Now, it doesn't have to be a particularly long hold. The Supreme Court could take it up within the next month or so, or they could not. They could drag it out. Months and months could go by, and you could not get resolution on these cases until after the Republican primary is finalized, which would obviously screw over other Republicans' desire to have voters actually know what Trump did and whether he's guilty before they vote. If they wait long enough, it could even put it to after the general election. And again, millions and millions of Americans would be denied the opportunity to know what Trump did. And also probably they would deny them any resolution on the case, because if Donald Trump wins, that's gonna be it. It's simply going to disappear. Waz, what do you think?
Donald Trump is crazy like a fox, because at the end of the day, presidents can't commit crimes technically, right? Like, he has a certain point there. They are protected from the laws of citizens, for instance, like okaying a freaking drone attack that kills, countless civilians in the process, right? Like, they commit atrocities within their job function all the time. And so they do have everyone who occupies the office. And the rest of the government does sort of commit to this blanket immunity to everybody, whatever the party, because of the nature of the job. However, there's gotta be some limit on, actually actively trying to put a monkey wrench in the wheels of democracy. Maybe that's where this immunity stops, right? Like, we take so much pride in, our tradition of a peaceful transfer of power, and maybe these people would take some level of pride the way that they claim the oldest democracy and blah 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 blah. Maybe they'd actually put their money where their mouth is with that principle.
Yeah, maybe. Don't hold your breath on any of this.
You don't seem too confident, John.
Being reasonable. No, look. Part of it is that we need to be, but we are overburdened with the multiple different cases going on at the same time. So it is difficult for even a person that really cares about this and wants to follow it, to follow, not only the January 6th case, and there's also Georgia, and there's the civil fraud, and then there's investigation of the documents, and there's a lot of stuff going on. And I think that especially in the context of a general election, and especially one where he's doing really well, people deserve to have all the details on that. And I don't like, look, this is Judge Chutkan, who, by the way, Trump has referred to as a racist in multiple instances because she's black. Let's be clear about that. This was not Judge Eileen Cannon. So I, at least in this case, don't think that she's doing it specifically to protect him, which would be my assumption were it to be Eileen Cannon. But that said, it isn't up to her on how fast this will be resolved. I mean, in theory, I suppose she could restart it. But if she's saying we need the Supreme Court's word on presidential immunity, I can't conceive of her all of a sudden deciding in early February that we've waited long enough. So this could be in the hands of the Supreme Court. And by the way, I don't necessarily think that the Supreme Court, even this deranged conservative Supreme Court, is going to make specific rulings to help him, although they have in the past, George W. Bush 2000. But again, they don't have to. They can simply wait. They don't have to decide anything. That way they don't go on the record as supporting him and the coup and all of that, but they can still get it so that he gets back in office. So I have a lot of fears going forward is what I will say. By the way, I just want to quickly give you a little bit of Trump's response to all of this. Again, this is theoretically good news for him. So one would think that he would be mollified to some extent, but instead you get this. So deranged Jack Smith, the Biden appointed nut job. You can just say nut job. Why is it in quotation marks? You're quoting yourself and you think he's a nut job. You're making it seem as if you don't think he is. I don't get how you think language works. Wants to rush to the Supreme Court on the important matter of presidential immunity, something which is so basic to America that it should be automatic. He doesn't want to go to our highest court with a loss. He just wants to interfere with the presidential election. If they really wanted speed, they would have brought this ridiculous lawsuit 3 years ago, literally before the coup. Somehow that makes sense to me. Anyway, he says it's election interference. Again, there was no time that they could have brought this case that they would not have said that it was intended to interfere with an election or whatever. So just be super clear about that. And they're trying to get it wrapped up. And so if you're innocent, it'll be wrapped up and then you can still campaign. You can be exonerated in front of the nation. But he clearly doesn't expect that to happen because he's guilty and he knows it. Final thoughts before we go to break. What do you think?
Yeah, he knows most of these prosecutors have him by the balls, but the obvious strategy is to delay, obfuscate, just kick the can down the road, and hopefully he beats Joe Biden in the general. And like you said, all of this stuff goes away. You can't imprison the democratically elected president of the United States, like not yet, anyway.
Yeah, well, and realistically, you're not going to get the opportunity to because he's simply going to dissolve the special counsel investigation, put a new head of the DOJ, and then that'll be that. Not on the Georgia case or potentially Arizona if they decide to look into it, but on a lot of these, that would be it.